Hello and welcome to Anthony Jacquin. I'm so delighted that you would come to Denmark and do this.
Pleasure. First time in Denmark. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I enjoy being with you.
Good.
So thank you for doing this interview. And first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Well, I am a hypnotist, that's for sure. I've been doing hypnotherapy for over 20 years. I went full-time with that in 2001. I got into performing with hypnosis in 2004. And I am lucky enough to get to travel many different countries around the world teaching hypnosis. Sometimes I'm teaching hypnotherapy with my father. We have a training school called the Jacquin Hypnosis Academy. And sometimes I'm teaching impromptu, kind of fun performance hypnosis as well. So, yeah.
Great. And why should anybody be interested in hypnosis, do you think?
It's like a key, if you like, or it's a skill. So it's something that can be learned. It's quite easy to learn. And once you've learnt it, I sometimes say it sort of eats other topics. Not just eats them, but it has to attach to other things that you're interested in because it will benefit those things. If you're into sales or influence or persuasion or teaching or any kind of thing that involves communicating, then you really should have an understanding of this because ultimately it's made of words. If you're into performance, enhancement, sport, any kind of creative pursuit, then ultimately you want to kind of unleash some of that creativity, and hypnosis can help you get into flow and kind of get into imaginative conditions. If you are interested in change, whether it's personal development or helping other people, then this is a wonderful tool for that. It's uninvasive, it's non-invasive. You don't need to kind of get into counselling and analysis and understanding to help people. And it's very effective. I mean, for helping people out of automatic behaviours that are getting in the way of their life. I mean habits, I mean phobias, fears, compulsions. It's an extremely effective way of doing that. So there's just so many good reasons. I've never been able to put this topic down since I first encountered it.
All right.
Yeah.
And what's the most impressive application of hypnosis that you have ever directly witnessed?
I've got to say that's showing people who are in chronic pain how to completely change their relationship to that, and to do that within minutes so that they no longer feel that pain. Early on I didn't do very much of that work. There just wasn't much of that coming my way, but my father has had the opportunity to do a fair bit of that and has developed his own approach to that, which again it took me a while to fully absorb and accept because it's so direct, it's so simple, it's so quick. But that's still, there's many things about it that still impress me and still blow my mind, but seeing someone who's in long-term chronic pain within minutes find themselves without that pain and moving differently and experiencing life differently, you know, it's extremely moving to see that happen, but it's just sort of testament to how malleable our personal reality is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. So is there anything that can't be done with hypnosis? Is there anything hypnosis can't solve or can't do?
Well, it seems at times like you have a superpower. You can make yourself invisible. You can do all sorts of incredible things. Is there anything it can't do? I don't know. I've done so. I guess so. I've done so many different things with it, especially, you know, under the guise of doing some research or opportunities I've had performance-wise to do crazy things. made people levitate, stolen a car, paid people with paper, lots of silly things like that that sort of seem incredulous on the surface. Is there anything it can't do?
Because
I don't really get the question. I mean,
okay.
yeah.
Because what you say right there.
Yeah.
There's been an argument in the hypnotherapy, hypnosis world that you can't do anything against your will. But you say you can't pay with paper. You can't steal a car. You can't get the security code.
You can do all of those things. I've definitely done all of those things. I returned the items later. I didn't actually steal the person's cash in the end. But yes, you can do all those things. It's an argument. I mean, it feels like we have a strong sense of free will. It feels like we're making decisions and doing that with some sense of control. But even the neuroscience these days is suggesting something other than that. That we're very much a pattern matching organic machine, that most of our behaviours are habitual. Certainly most of our problems show that we cannot just exert our will as we please. If you could control your thoughts, you just think happy thoughts. If you can control your feelings, you'd just get rid of bad feelings. If you could simply choose to stop certain behaviours, then surely you would choose to do it. When you do enough of this therapy work and you start to see people's patterns and compulsions and fears and desires and everything else really as learnt patterns of behaviour that are running automatically, and questions about will and free will and making people do things against their will just like frazzle. I get the sentiment. It feels like that, and we don't really want to think that. I think that question comes from an idea that someone else is imposing their will upon yours. I don't even really look at it that way. It's more a case of your personal reality is extremely malleable, liquid, fluid. The biggest flaw in the system is that you think it's reliable and solid. So, just think about it. You could hear one thing and it could change your views about something. It could change how you feel about someone. It could do that to the point where you never look at that situation or that person in the same way again. So you don't really need hypnosis to do that. You just need an extra piece of information. So, that's just where I stand on the free will debate as a whole. Yeah. It's not. I read somewhere the closest thing to fact in neuroscience is that free will is dead. It's not what makes us human. It's just what it feels like. That sense of control we have is also completely automatic, and it's completely variable, and it changes all day long, in different situations. And most of the, peak performance behaviours that people are sort of aspiring to, they're actually aspiring to automatically express excellence in art or sport or business. The trying to control everything kind of makes things rather rigid. So I don't know. I just feel like the free will debate, if you dig into some of the, not just philosophical, but the kind of psychological and neurological views about that, you'll see it's not as black and white as we imagine. And some people even suggest there's no one in there to have free will. But if you think about that stuff, you really will go crazy.
Yeah, you will. That's what blows my mind. Yeah. But amongst academics, hypnosis academics and researchers, and amongst hypnosis therapists, there's been this debate: what is hypnosis? We've discussed what is free will.
Yeah.
No one knows if there is a free will.
Yeah.
What is hypnosis? What defines hypnosis, or how do you define hypnosis? If you should put it in simple terms.
Well, if I was going to speak to, a lay person who wanted therapy and they asked me what is hypnosis, I would just say hypnosis is a way of changing the way you think, feel and respond. It's a way of hooking into those automatic patterns of behaviour, those responses, things you want to do or things you don't want to do, and changing them, really just with the use of words, the use of provoking your imagination in a way. So it's very straightforward and simple. Theoretically, the way I look at hypnosis, and it touches on the last question, is that with regard to our behaviours, they're all kind of tagged with an accompanying sense of control or an accompanying sense that they are happening. So what hypnosis looks like in performance is that some hypnotist comes in and kind of takes away your sense of control and manages to provoke these and unleash these automatic responses from you. In therapy, often it's the opposite. The person already has an accompanying or a lack of a sense of control. And the hypnotist comes along and kind of changes things around. So you now feel like you have a sense of control. So for me, the defining characteristic of hypnosis, things that would, the thing that would define a behaviour as hypnotic or not, relate to this sort of sliding scale where we have a sense of control and doing on one end and a sense of things being automatic and happening on the other. I sometimes say my job as a hypnotist is to turn a doing into a happening. My job as a therapist sometimes is to create the illusion of control.
Yeah. And do you have, do you want to experience that?
Mm-hmm.
You want to experience that fine line? Do you have any advice for people who want to experience it just as hypnosis, or someone who wants to try it for therapy? What to look out for?
Sure. I would. My mantra these days is begin. So hypnosis is actually very simple to learn. It's also pretty straightforward to experience. It's worthwhile getting past some of the sort of bulkier misconceptions about it, that you're going to be asleep or you're not going to know what's going on or anything like that. It's got nothing to do with any of that. If people want to learn self-hypnosis, a friend of mine, Adam Eason, has a very clear and detailed book about that called The Science of Self-Hypnosis. I'd say that's the best resource I've come across if you want to learn self-hypnosis. If you just want to kind of have an experience of what it might be like to, absorb suggestions, or what it might be like to have hypnotherapy, then perhaps you could go and download some hypnosis audios, things like that. There's a company called Uncommon Knowledge. I think perhaps they run hypnosis downloads. They have hundreds of titles, and there'd be something there that's suited to everyone, whether they want to get rid of a problem or whether they want to access a particular resourceful state. Listen to some of that stuff, and you'll soon find out what it is, partly by discovering what it isn't. You are part of the process, despite the way performance hypnosis sometimes looks. You're part of the answer in therapy, even though it can look like you adopt quite a passive role. It's a collaborative, I don't want to say act because it's not an act, but it's a collaborative event that requires and engages your imagination. That's what's happening in life anyway. So hypnosis comes along and helps you change your internal dialogue, change your perspective with regard to the thoughts and the feelings that, you know, currently add up to being problematic or being useful. So it's really just like imagination games. And the point is, those imagination games, as simple as they are, can create quite out of the ordinary, profound experiences. Even things that seem silly, like not being able to lift your hand or not being able to say your name, things that seem kind of silly, are actually quite profound experiences to have. And they point at something. They point toward the fact that your personal reality is extremely malleable, flexible, plastic, liquid. Yeah.
Are there any dangers? Is there anything to look out for? You hear a lot of misconceptions. You can be trapped in trance. You can be forced to do something against your will. Is there anything to look out for? Are there any dangers?
I guess it's important to trust the person that you're going to work with. It's important to ensure the credibility of your therapist, even if they're not a hypnotherapist. It's important to recognise that just because someone has taken a position of authority doesn't mean you have to do what they say. But things like being trapped in hypnosis or being given untoward suggestions and things like that, it's highly unlikely that's going to be an issue. I know people have fears about that kind of stuff. They're suddenly going to reveal a load of information about something and things like that. It's just highly unlikely to happen. I think it's a good thing to sort of have some personal insight into your own being, into your own mind, and not to just immediately hand that over to somebody else. There are, some people suffering certain sort of mental illnesses where perhaps hypnosis is not best suited, given that we're all playing around with your reality. But understand that, in the UK, the vast majority of hypnotherapists are just lay people who have studied hypnotherapy. Very few are actually doctors or dentists or psychiatrists. So, just point it toward what used to be called neurosis rather than psychosis, and you'll probably be okay. If you need more professional help or you're concerned about it, then go and see a doctor and find out, is it appropriate for me to have hypnotherapy? And but yeah, I mean, when you're performing as a hypnotist, there are certain health and safety considerations. Most of this is taken care of with common sense. Pretty straightforward.
Have you ever done anything with hypnosis that you regret, or made any mistakes where you think?
I've certainly made mistakes, There are the times in therapy that, you kind of wish you'd serve people slightly better. Someone said something to me the other day that, if you could see some of your first clients again, now that you've got more experience, you're like, just come back. I'm much better at this now, that kind of thing, which, is a fair idea. But I've always done my best to turn up, be present, do a professional job. With regard to performance, of course, you can look back and realise that you made a mistake, or that you went too far, or things like that. But I don't really regret those things. I just try and adjust in the light of that. Yeah, no real regrets.
No. Yeah. And there's been this mind-body connection discussion. Some on the one side, doctors giving medication, do this, eat this, get better. On the other side, this more hippie approach. Oh, you can just do like this. Do you see a bridge between them, and does hypnosis fit anywhere in there? Or how do you see hypnosis with this mind-body connection?
Personally, I don't. This might sound a bit strange. I don't really make a distinction between mind and body. So it's not so much a bridge between mind and body. I don't make any distinction between the mind and the body. Is hypnosis an effective way of encouraging different habits that will assist you in having a healthy life physically? Yeah. Is it useful to assist you in having a healthy psychological life? Absolutely. There's no question about that. But is it a bridge between the two? I believe they're the same thing. Yeah. There's a slightly deeper discussion. Perhaps you wish to have, but that's just where I'm at. I personally don't make a distinction between the two. I know sometimes people say things like, yes, but that's a physical problem. Or, you know, that's like a mental habit. But in terms of your experiencing of a problem, it could be a physical pain. If you say, you know, where are you experiencing that suffering? You might want to point to your toe or something. But your experiencing of it, there's no border between your mental awareness of it and the seeming physical location of it. So yes, I can understand the distinction, and I understand what people are talking about. But again, it's not the most useful distinction for me anymore. It's just one thing.
We have asked other hypnotherapists, other people who were interested in this interview, to come up with questions.
Okay.
And one of these questions is, what do you do if people tell you that they can't visualize?
What do I do if people say to me that they can't visualize? Well, it's a good question, because many of the techniques that people use in therapy have quite a strong visual component. You know, picture this, picture that, see yourself. I tend to say, imagine and get a sense of yourself. So if you say that, it kind of doesn't matter too much how people get a sense of themselves. So could you imagine this room if we move the piano over there? Most people just say, yeah. If you say, can you picture the piano over there, that kind of thing, then maybe the person will get concerned about it. But the vast majority of the time, if I'm just slightly more vague about it and just say, get a sense of yourself, that does the job. I also say things like, I'm going to ask you to imagine some things. You know, I might say to you, imagine blue. You might think of the sky. You might see the word in your head. You might be saying it yourself. You may just kind of get a sense of what that would be like. However you imagine that is fine. So it's not vital that people picture stuff. The other reason people kind of worry when they say they can't visualize, it's not just, I mean, there are apparently some people who it's just black. When they shut their eyes, it's just black. They never ever see a picture. I came across a website where these people sort of collected themselves together and were talking about that. Often they got into adulthood before they realised that other people are vividly picturing stuff. But aside from from those few people, and you can use another sense, aside from that, the main concern people have about not being able to visualize is actually that they feel they're not visualizing things vividly enough. It's not real as real. They can't see their face. And again, my experience using hypnosis, using self-hypnosis, is it just doesn't matter. There's some decent science showing that highly hypnotizable people do not have a special imagination. They're not imagining things more vividly than someone who's not so hypnotizable. So that gave me a lot of comfort as a subject. The way I'm imagining stuff is fine. If I said to you, picture a dog on that table, what kind of dog is it? Most people would just say, you know, it's a poodle or it's an Alsatian. There's a difference between that and me saying, and is it a real dog? Do you really see it? Yeah. If I say, you know, think of a loved one's face, you could describe that face to me. Wherever it's coming from, whether it's a photograph you remember, or it's just the essence of them, or you just see their eyes and their smile in isolation, I don't really believe it matters that much. So if someone says, I can't visualize, there are little things you can do to encourage them to recognize they do still sense stuff. But I don't feel the need to try to turn them into a good visualizer. I might, if someone actually says that, then sure, I'm not going to say, see yourself, picture yourself, picture yourself. I just say, get a sense of yourself out there living life the way you want to live it. And I can engage their other senses. Notice the things that people are saying to you as they notice you're completely free of that. So it's, you know, I get the question. It's just, in practice, it's not a big deal for me. Yeah.
And if people tell you, I don't think I can be hypnotized, or I was hypnotized once, but it didn't really feel like hypnosis, is there any way you would approach this? Is there any way if people ain't that hypnotizable, that you can make them better subjects? Get them from high...
There are ways that you can do that. You know, in therapy, very often, if someone's had an experience or at least an encounter with a hypnotist before, it could be a friend who was learning it at college, or it could be they went to see a hypnotherapist. Then, yeah, often enough, the person will have left that encounter thinking, I don't actually think I was hypnotized. And that's often because there was no evidence that they were hypnotized. They were asked to relax, they were asked to imagine some stuff, they were guided through a little visualization, but it just felt a bit like that. It just felt like I was just sitting with my eyes closed, I was just relaxing. So they may be highly responsive. It's just that nothing has been asked of them hypnotically. However, let's say that they, you know, it was a stronger encounter, or the hypnotist certainly had, you know, more chops and tested their work. Sometimes people think they've been to a stage show but they weren't chosen, or they went up on stage but then they were rejected. So they're kind of drawing a conclusion based on that I can't be hypnotized. Again, maybe just on that night, in that mood with that hypnotist, they just weren't quite up to par. Can people get better as subjects? Yes, they can. I've got much better as a subject. And one of the main ways to get better as a subject is to listen to people who are highly hypnotizable and to get some insight from them about their role, about how engaged they were in the process. So when they say things to you like, yeah, you know, I was imagining that as completely as I could, or when he said that, I was doing this, I found myself thinking, oh, my arm is lifting, this is strange. In other words, the low often doesn't have the natural skill, and by that I just mean they simply don't naturally do the things that would encourage a better response. So they can first of all be systematically educated in terms of their role in a hypnotic encounter. That will first of all make people better. But the reality is that some people are so-called virtuosos. They don't need any training, just like some people don't need any training to sing. They can just sing. They don't need to be told how to stand. They don't need to be told how to breathe. They don't need to be told to project to the back of the room. They can sing. Other people can't sing. But most of us are in the middle. Most of us with training become better at singing, and most of us with some training become better at being hypnotized. The other thing is, you don't need to be a hypnotic virtuoso to benefit from therapeutic suggestions. Even those perceived as lows will benefit from suggestions for pain control. So, you know, don't worry about it. You know, if you need a bit more training, you need a bit more training. But certainly I've become a much better subject, not just as time's gone on, but as my view of what hypnosis is, and more importantly, what my role is in this dance, essentially. That's kind of what it is. So yeah, we can get
So it's like
we can
a
get
skill
better.
you can learn. And
It's a
build up.
skill you can learn, and that frame of hypnotic responding being a skill is a much more useful frame than it being some trait. I know some people look at it as, you know, you need a special brain, or you need a special gene, or you need a special something, and I think that's a dated view. I don't believe it. There's no evidence for that, and the fact that there are numerous bits of research showing that lows and mediums can be turned into highs with training, and that they remain high after that is more encouraging, and it's actually closer to the truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I get out, tell real people in the real world that I'm a hypnotist. Some of them, they freak out or turn away. Why do you think some people fear hypnosis?
I think it's because we value this sense of control so much, and we probably just because of like some cultural suggestion, we think that we're giving up that control when we get hypnotized. Most people have heard the name Svengali, you know, as a sort of puppet master, you know, a kind of Simon Cowell controlling the world of pop music and stuff like that. Svengali is the name of a character in a book from the late 19th century called Trilby. And Svengali is the archetype of an evil hypnotist, in that he takes advantage of people who he has previously helped. That was the best-selling book in the whole of Europe in the 19th century. So this idea that the hypnotist, you've got to understand, nearly every family would have read this book. There wasn't the abundance of books available that there are now. This was the best-selling book of the 19th century. So personally, I think we're still feeling the repercussions of this. You know, our grandparents would have been told certain things about hypnotists and the fluence and the influence, and that image, that Svengali, that evil mind-controlling character, has been perpetuated in films and plays and literature. So I actually think we're still feeling the repercussions of this book Trilby. However, just because someone says, doesn't mean they don't want to be hypnotized, doesn't mean they can't be hypnotized, and it actually isn't a barrier to either of those things. If anything, that little spike of emotion is our friend. There's nothing wrong with having a fear, especially if the fear is you can be hypnotized. It's not really a problem.
I see what you mean. Yeah. We've got another question from another hypnotherapist who asks, do you see a role using hypnosis with coaching?
Yes. Because hypnosis eats everything. hypnosis enhances everything. If you're a coach and you don't use suggestion, you don't use hypnosis, then you're essentially going at this with one hand behind your back. Not only can you use this with your clients and enhance their life, much more value is you give this to your clients. You teach them how to use self-hypnosis. And of course, you will then get better results. Everybody needs to know this. You know, it's nice to have secrets. It's nice to be in a neat little, you know, cabal of hypnotists. However, this is something that every parent, teacher, doctor, nurse, coach should have available. My dad likes to say two things. It's just words. It's just imagination. And that's it. Why shouldn't they have access to this? Part of the reason people think it may be problematic is because of these associations with it being some weird state, trance state, special state that you go in and out of. Those ideas are lovely, romantic, poetic ideas, but they have no basis in science. So once we let go of that stuff and realise all of those things are just suggested effects, then they actually become useful again rather than a barrier. And I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that needs to happen if hypnosis is going to be not just accepted, because it is accepted in the British Medical Association, American Medical Association, Australian Medical Association as being a thing, and there's a evidence base for certain applications of it. But if it's going to be fully accepted in terms of doctors being able to refer to hypnotherapists, then we actually need to escape the trance myth. Yeah.
Because it's damning.
Just because it scares people, it spooks them out a little bit. And the only reason it looks like that, the only reason it looks like special state, sleep, trance, deeper, is because that's what's being suggested. If you look at the social, psychological and the cognitive behavioural views of hypnosis, you'll see that you can just sidestep this stuff, or you can recognise it for what it is, a product of suggestion, as opposed to the process itself. And then it's much easier for doctors and nurses and carers and coaches to wield without worrying, you know, people, can I actually manage this special state? Yeah. So I just feel that really needs to, it's happening in that the dominant statist view has sort of lost its crown and is slipping further and further away, certainly in sort of the world of academics. But in terms of the public and, you know, the sort of medical establishment who you know, only get like 20 minutes of this in their entire medical education career, you know, it's a thing and it can do this, but they never really study it, they never really look at the vast body of research that is being done. They're still being scared by these old ghosts, and most of them have been banished actually. It's just where it's at. It's just about education and the continued clarification and expression of this cognitive behavioural perspective. It's a modern perspective, but it's not just radical and new. It's been around for decades too. It's just now it's becoming the dominant view, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. These next few questions are directly pointed at hypnotherapists or magicians.
Okay.
A lot of hypnotherapists or magicians get this new skill. A lot of new doctors due to nurses, but they are afraid to use it. After the training, they think, can I do it?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice to get started, to get over that barrier?
Yeah, well, a lot of the techniques can be used outside of the frame of hypnosis. I don't think you're doing anyone a disservice or being deceptive to do that. So first of all, I'd just say just begin with the technique. Put the hypnotizing bit to one side and just begin by just running some of the techniques. Keep it simple. Complexity and the sort of longer, drawn-out techniques don't really add anything. They don't assist. They don't ensure that the person responds better. So keep it really clean. Keep it really simple, especially in those professions where you have some air of authority or expertise. That makes your job so much easier anyway. It's not that people have to believe in hypnosis or even believe in you, but if you're a performer or if you're a therapist or if you're a doctor or if you're a dentist, people are kind of looking to you for guidance. So however you say it goes down is the way it goes down. You manage their expectation, you create their expectation, and then you deliver based upon that. So that's part of it. The other thing that stops people from doing it and, shall I do it, is actually just a fear of failing, which is no different from any other walk of life. It's a fear of looking stupid, silly, incompetent. And this is particularly a trap for magicians. They're used to things working, they're used to things being a sure thing, and it takes a little bit of time to realise that your entire credibility, career and everything else does not hang on whether this person gets hypnotised and hallucinates or not. I say stick to the simple stuff, the basic stuff. It's entertaining enough, and it will teach you what you need to know. It will train your eye, it will train your ear, it will show you the differences in how people respond, and then you're naturally going to start to gravitate toward the kind of responders you need to do what it is you want to do. So it's that. But if you're a therapist, you've come across this stuff and you want to apply it, you just have to take a deep breath and begin. Sometimes you've just got to jump off and hold your nose and find out how deep the water is.
Yeah. When I first started out, I came across this brilliant book that you have actually written called Reality is Plastic. It's one of the best books on the subject, especially if you want to get started, because it's hands-on, direct. And in this book you mention going from being a hypnotist to becoming the hypnotist. When did you make that transformation, and why does it matter to become the hypnotist?
Yeah, sometimes I'm slightly misunderstood. I'm still glad that I included that little section, and it can be interpreted in a number of different ways. What it doesn't mean is, try to be the dominant hypnotist in the world and think you're the number one or anything like that. Partly it's tied into the idea that you're probably going to be the only hypnotist that people meet. Yeah, even the hypnotherapists, they're not meeting them very often. It's super interesting when they do. And you know infinitely more about this subject than they do, even if you're a beginner. So it's up to you to represent. It's up to you to assume an air of knowledge, expertise, comfortable to demonstrate, deliver, talk about it, and around it, and so on. So that's partly what it means. Secondly, it's that because the subject is so off topic, off grid for most people, they are looking to you to display this, it's not that they're looking to you, they're not really thinking about it. It's that if you display this, if you can keep your doubts to yourself, then it gives people a great sense of comfort to know that you seem to know what you're doing, and that precision is important to you, and the details are important to you. So it's a way of kind of communicating that you're in control. People find it much easier to give up control if they feel that you have a sense of control. Yeah, I don't mean being an authoritarian, overbearing, controlling Svengali. I just mean someone who is relaxed, someone who is grounded, someone who is comfortable, someone who can have flexibility in what they're doing. So there's that. So I don't know why I sort of picked that up pretty early on. The first few hypnotherapy sessions I did, like most other people, I had a few sheets of paper with some scripts and some words on it. It was like, just close your eyes and lay down there, and don't open your eyes. And I'd sort of read as confidently as I could from these pieces of paper. But even then I managed to kind of get results. And part of that was just being congruent with the idea that this is a thing, this is a real thing, and I can do this, and you can do this too. So there was that. And we all adopt different masks and outfits and roles as we go through life. At first, of course, it feels a bit like faking it. It's just the way it is, and I think that's why sometimes friends and family struggle to accept you as the hypnotist. But they can be as easily hypnotized as anybody else. You just have to stay with it and encourage them to engage. So it's an important concept. Represent, hold your line, display some confidence, and it makes it much easier for your clients or your subjects on stage to relax, knowing they're in safe hands. That's really what it's about. Yeah.
Right. All right. I've got a question from a magician who asks, how can magic improve hypnosis? And how can hypnosis improve magic?
It's a good question. Hypnosis is the real magic. There's no illusion here. It is what it is. You can change people's reality. You can appear to have superpowers. There's just so much you can do. So how can it improve it? Well, I think a distinction I often talk about is drawn from a wonderful book written by a magician and hypnotist called Maximum Entertainment. I'm sure you've heard of that. And he says, look, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing a magic trick, some special mental feat, or you're hypnotizing, it's going to be received by the public, by your audience, in one of three ways. The first is a puzzle, which basically means if I knew the secret, I would be able to do that. Puzzles can be fun, interesting, but they're rarely like mind-blowing. The second is a trick. A trick suggests skill is involved. If I knew how to do it, I probably still wouldn't be able to do it. Well done. I mean, there's nothing worse as a magician than saying, wow, that must have taken you ages to learn how to do that. It's like, fuck. Yeah, I do have a life. And the third category, which is where we all hope to be and what we all sort of hope that we're doing, is an extraordinary moment. We're hoping. And that, I know, because I know so many magicians, that it's not about the material. It's rarely about the material. It's about the delivery. So my heroes in terms of magic and are people who have presence, are people who can command a room, whether they're speaking or silent. People who can fully focus your attention with the most tiniest of moves or gestures, people who can lure you in with what ultimately is a small effect, if you like. So I think often, hypnotists can learn from good magicians who are solid performers, not just tricksters, but people who can really do the things I've just suggested. What can magicians learn from hypnotists? They can learn that there is real magic out there, that this is something that is entirely in their grasp. This is something that actually is a perfect fit for magic. When I first got into stage hypnosis, it was often suggested you should never do a trick before you do hypnosis, because people will then think your hypnosis is some kind of trick. And logically it sort of made sense. But in practice, I don't know where this comes from, is they don't care. They don't care about your special cards. They don't care about your months of practice. They don't care that it's a cleverer way of doing something invisible. They don't care, because people just care about themselves and they just want to be entertained. So I just look at it as that. These people are adults, these people are intelligent, and they have wishes and desires and dreams, and they like mystery. So just either way, you just keep some mystery alive. But one of the real joys of hypnosis is you can actually be honest about the mystery. This is what happens when you harness your concentration, your imagination. Your personal reality changes, your perception can be entirely flipped. And that can be done in minutes, and it can be done and give you an experience that you will be talking about 20 years from now, an experience that you will never quite be able to sum up. So magic, mentalism, hypnosis, it doesn't really matter. It's just about whose hands is it in, and have they given enough attention to how this is going to be received. And if they focus on that, then they soon see it's actually close to irrelevant what the material is. And ultimately the bigger context is normally entertaining people. And if you can entertain people and give them extraordinary moments, then for a moment they forget, and they stop trying to work it out, and they stop trying to see how skilled you are. They're just it's a little blissful moment of just, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's kind of a moment where everything just falls away for a second. It's childlike almost, and we can do that. But at no point make the mistake of thinking that it's you. This is always a collaborative event. Yeah.
Sure. So if people want to learn more about you, if people want to read more about you, learn more about you, what you do, where can they go?
Okay, well, I have a personal website with a lot of information on that covers how you can access me for hypnotherapy. I also provide a lot of one-to-one mentoring for both therapists and performers. My website is just my name, anthonyjacquin.com. And you can check out the Jacquin Hypnosis Academy.com. That's the training school that I run with my father, Freddie Jacquin. We have a wonderful technique that we released in the last 6 months called the Arrow Technique.com. You'll find that. It will help you help others deal with chronic pain. You don't need to be a hypnotherapist to learn this stuff. This is something that anyone can get their head around. It's very simple. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on there. I'm very accessible if you have questions about this stuff. I love talking about my favourite topic, so just hit me with an email, inquiries@anthonyjacquin.com, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I'll include links to all of these web pages down below this video, and I would definitely recommend your book, reality is plastic.
Yeah, reality
Everyone,
is. Yeah, sure, reality is.
Slightest interest in hypnosis.
Yeah, and thank you for translating it into Danish. I'm now very pleased to say Reality is Plastic is available in French, Italian, Brazilian Portuguese, and Danish. And there's a few other languages in the pipeline. If you're not on Audible yet, then you could become a member of Audible. You could get my book for free, and then you can decide whether you want to stay subscribed to Audible. So yeah. Cheers, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.